Watch and burn.
Hey everyone, so tonight I would like to discuss the third Death Wish, starring of course none other than Charles Bronson. Now this, out of the initial four at least, because I really don't like the fifth one. The fifth one does have a few exceptional kills, especially the one with the soccer ball, but despite how technically a lot of people felt that the fifth one actually had kind of a plot, I always felt that the plot for the fifth one was just sort of shoehorned into place because, you know, a movie needs a plot in order to be a movie. Kersey's in the witness relocation program or something. I don't care. I don't like the fifth movie. I never have. My favorite Death Wish is the third Death Wish, and that's because there is an actual war in the streets that only Bronson can solve, or Kersey, sorry, can solve, but at the same time, the war in the streets is 100% because of Kersey's actions that lead up to said war at the end of the third movie. The plot for this one is, of course, this is not rape revenge in this. This is more the killing of a friend revenge. Paul Kersey is going to visit an old war buddy of his in a really horrible neighborhood, I believe in New York, and before he gets there, his friend who refused to pay the neighborhood gang any protection money, he's killed by them. So when Kersey shows up, he's found with the body, so of course he's brought in where he meets the hard-nosed cop who's out to get him and knows who he is, and he says, "Look out, bud, you know, I'm gonna get you if you fucking do anything to anyone," yada, yada, yada. So once he's released, he goes back to his friend's apartment where he bumps into another old dude that lives in the building as well, who explains sort of the lay of the land to Bronson. There's the leader of the gang that Bronson had met previously while he was in jail, being held on suspicion of the murder of his friend. And here's all of his buddies and this one guy, the giggler. He can run really fast. He killed a woman stealing her purse this time last year, I believe. And so Bronson begins to do what Bronson does, and he systematically starts to work his way through the gang members. He sets up a few traps for the cute old couple. Sets up a trap in their bathroom window that ends up knocking out a couple teeth from one of the scumbags that are attempting to break into their place, because that's what this gang does, is in addition to running the gun and drug trade in this area, they also get to victimize the people in the neighborhood endlessly because the cops don't care. And even if the cops did care, they're so ridiculously outnumbered that they can't do anything at all. So the gang knows that they've won. Now, of course, in true earlier Death Wish fashion, the fourth and fifth Death Wish movies, do not have any sexual assaults, but this one, of course, has a second gang rape in it. The first gang rape, of course, came by way of Death Wish 2. This one happens to Bronson's buddy, who ends up doing sort of like a neighborhood watch thing with him. Alex Winter, who would go on to play Ted Theodore Logan in Bill and Ted, he is one of the guys that gang rape his wife, Bronson's buddy's wife, Now again, it isn't too graphic, but at the same time, it's graphic enough. They only start tearing her clothes off while she's crying and struggling, and then it cuts to Bronson and his buddy in the hospital waiting room, waiting for the doctor to explain what happened and how traumatized she is. So if you take issue with rape in films, you're going to have a problem with this movie. But the simplest thing to do is you can just hit next, just fire to the next chapter. It cuts right to the hospital scene. That's what I always do. So it's not the end of the world. But again, if you do find yourself being sensitive to things like sex assault, yet again, it's on full display in this movie. Aside from that, this movie is a hell of a lot of fun. Bronson has a bazooka in this one, and there is a literal, like I said at the beginning, there's an actual war in the streets. The gang pick up the phone and they call for gang backup. They call in other chapters of their gang, I suppose, even though that is never really made all that clear. The head guy calls, he's like, "Yeah, I need more people." And then boom, next thing you know, there's a bunch of bikers everywhere and they're trashing things. And the cute old couple that Bronson helped set the trap up for and knocked out the guy's teeth near the start of the film, they are set on fire and then, if I'm not mistaken, shot to death. I thought that was a particularly cruel end to such a cute couple. There is another attempted gang rape on a chick near the end during the riot scene when the big gang battle's going on, but that is stopped. Bronson kills a lot of people, and then when all is said and done with, Bronson looks like he's him and the cop, of course, who's out to get him. Now suddenly the cop's his buddy, of course, because these movies aren't meant to be taken seriously. And kind of in the same breath, that's probably why they shouldn't have things like semi-graphic sex assaults, because sex assaults are very serious, and in a movie that is clearly so over the top and it's just so completely unrealistic, they really shouldn't have something that is as realistic as sexual assaults taking place anywhere near these films. These movies would be a lot more fun if they would just steer clear from the rape aspect. Now, I do know with movies of this type, and especially Canon looking to cash in on any kind of sleaze that they possibly could, at this point, the rape revenge movie was still going strong-ish. This movie, I think, came out around 83 or 84. It would thankfully die off by the end of the 80s. So I get why it's in here if that's sort of your thing. You like the sleazy exploitation film aspect. But considering how over the top, I mean, Bronson has a fucking bazooka. That's how it ends. Him and the cop are sort of outgunned by the main bad guy, the head of the gang. Bronson grabs the bazooka and blows him up in his apartment, blowing out the entire side of his buddy's apartment where Bronson was staying. And that's when the cop's like, you better get out of here. I'll give you a few minutes, you know, just like at the end of the second one. Yeah, I'll give you a few minutes before I hit the alarm. The cop says, you better go, you know, and then it shows Kersey, Bronson, walking down the street with a suitcase because yet again, he gets away with it. And again, I can understand why. He really sort of helped the police and he helped the neighborhood clean up this really radically disgusting aspect that was controlling pretty much every aspect of their lives. So I get that. But it is always really convenient how Bronson always gets to skate at the end of these films. Jimmy Page did the music too. That was awesome. But I love this movie. This is my favorite movie. Absolutely, hands down, this is my favorite Death Wish. I really like the second one as well. It's almost like you could argue that these 2 and 3 are sort of like one movie. They have the same color palette. They have the same vibe. They have the same cinematography. There's of course, the gang rape in the second one is far more graphic, especially if you can track down one of the uncensored earlier copies of the movie. But they are in a lot of ways the same movie, so you could watch them back to back. But my favorite, this is definitely, my favorite. I love Death Wish 3. But yeah, look, I'm going to go because this is pushing 8 minutes. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for close to 8 minutes while I discussed the third Death Wish starring the one and only Charles Bronson. If you liked this review or discussion or whatever this was, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. And I hope everybody has an awesome night. I will talk to you soon. I just wanted to say thank you for making it through the entire video. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to remind everyone one more time, even though I've probably already done this in the video that you just watched, to please click the like button as well as the subscribe button because it helps this channel grow. And thank you for hitting like and subscribe, and we will see you guys really soon.